Hi, everyone, and welcome to Happy Trails Hiking. My name is Kay, and this is a Foodie Friday episode. And today we're going to be talking about lobster, specifically Nova Scotia's South Shore Lobster Crawl. I have a special guest with me today, and her name is Amy Piper, and she is from the website Follow the Piper, but she was working for another website called foodieflashpacker.com for this festival and this trip. So I just want to jump right into it. Well, everybody, please welcome Amy from Follow the Piper. Hi, Amy. It's good to see you.
Hi, Kay. How are you?
Doing great. Thank you. Happy Friday.
Yeah, Friday.
Yes, Friday. Exactly. All right. Well, you're from Michigan. At least that's what I remember the last time. So how did you get to go do this trip in Nova Scotia? So let me know a little bit about that.
Well, Nathan from Foodie Flashpacker contacted me and asked me to represent him on a trip that he wasn't able to take. And so I was hosted by Visit Nova Scotia, but everything that I did is something that you can also participate in and do. So I'll tell you how to do that as we go through.
Awesome. I'm really excited about that. I was excited to find out that you were doing things that we could all do. So that was really cool. We've got a great room with us this morning for chat. And for those of you who might be watching the replay, please make sure you leave a comment down below. Say hello to Amy for me. And if you're here in the chat with us and watching, please hit that thumbs up and share this out with other folks who might be interested in going lobstering or finding out more about Nova Scotia for that matter. I do want to say hello to the folks that are in the chat. And if you are here, please type in the chat. So say hello. Life on the Trail is here, as well as Our Haunted Travels Panic D, Deb Shane, Gemma's Journey Grace, Lori Bryant, and Rachel Rawson. Thank you all for coming, and I'm happy to have you here. All right, Amy, let's just jump into these questions. So you were sponsored by Visit Nova Scotia. That's very cool. And you took part in the Lobster Crawl Festival. And I guess there aren't very many lobster fishermen in Michigan. What did you learn? What are some fun facts that you learned about lobsters on your trip?
Well, one thing that I learned is that lobsters can be right or left-handed. They have pincher claws and crusher claws, and I have a picture of that where we can take a look, but they're not always on the same side of the lobster. Lobsters can regenerate their claws, so if you catch a lobster, you might find one that has one claw that's much smaller than the other, and that's because they lost a claw and it's growing back. And the largest lobster ever recorded was caught in Nova Scotia in 1977, and if you can imagine, it was 44 pounds.
Whoa.
So
that's a huge lobster.
So yeah. Huge. So from a foodie perspective, another fun fact is that lobsters are high in omega-3 fatty acid, so they're really a healthy choice, very low in calories.
Yeah.
So
I like to eat lobster. That's part of my healthy lifestyle, but it's very expensive. So I eat a lot of shrimp, but I haven't gotten a lot of lobster. So I'm excited to hear all about your stuff. So that's cool. Do you want, well, our next question is about towns in Nova Scotia. Do you want me to bring up that map?
Yes, please.
All right. So how many towns did you get to visit while you were in Nova Scotia?
Well, the south where I was, this is a map of Nova Scotia, and I flew into Halifax. So I went all along this South Shore, Peggy's Cove, and Lunenburg, and all the way down to Cape Sable, and this whole area here. It's called the Lighthouse Route. So that's where I was. There were well over 10 towns that I visited for a number of different things. So
Okay.
I'm trying to shift to the next.
Whoops. You stopped sharing your screen with us. Or no. I did. Something weird happened on this end. Sorry about that.
Yeah, something did. Here, I can do it. No, it's not.
Go. Okay, so there we go.
So if you notice on these two lobster, these were in the lobster pound that I visited, and you can clearly see one is left-handed over here, and this one is right-handed.
Oh wow! Yeah, you really can tell the difference.
Yeah, so that's very. So this, when you were asking about towns, one of the first towns we visited was Chester, and it is it has the oldest rural pub in Nova Scotia, and this was our first taste of lobster. This is the village pub called Forecastle. And it's a very historic. Many of these towns have such history, maritime history. This particular building used to be a blacksmith shop on one end and a stable on the other. And then in the center, it was like an inn. And here's some of their food.
Oh, look at that. Tell us what each one of those things is.
Here in the upper left is lobster chowder, and they garnished it with a whole lobster claw. Then over here, we have lobster mac and cheese, and it was just loaded with lobster.
Oh, wow.
And then here we have a lobster roll, which was on a lobster croissant. So the butteriness of the croissant paired so perfectly with the butteriness of the lobster.
Wow. Oh, wow. That's impressive, Amy. That's really cool. Colorado Martini has joined us, and she says, well, she was mentioning, holy crap, 44 pounds from your lobster earlier. That was the biggest. So that's huge. They have a little bit of a delay in the chat. So that's why we're getting a little bit of things, but wow.
Okay.
So we have, I have lots more questions. You go ahead. What is this? These churches?
Well, this is at Mahon's Bay and another little town. And the New York Times called this view pretty as a picture. In summer, it would have a lot of foliage, but it's 3 churches. There are actually 5, but from across the bay, you can see these 3 churches. So again, a lot of history here.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Ooh, beer.
And in Mahone Bay, there's a place called Salt Box Brewing, and there is they invented or created, I should say, this crustacean elation, which is a lobster beer. Now, I'd love to dispel any myths out there that you might have heard, but none of this should smell fishy. It's not like that at all. It's very fresh, ocean, briny taste. And if you drink this with some lobster or lobster roll, it really enhances the flavor.
Wow, yummy. We do have a note. Colorado Martini says that looks like it's below sea level. Is Nova Scotia or the place, the South Shore there, below sea level? Do you know, Amy?
I'm not 100% sure, to be honest.
Okay, that's fine. You know,
I'll
we
have
don't
to
have to
look
know
that one up.
We'll try to look that one up for you, Colorado Martini. Sorry about that. This beer looks wonderful, and so does that church, by the way.
Well, this church, I wanted to mention, you were asking me about towns, and this is another small town called Lunenburg, and it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site.
Ooh.
And this church originally burned down in a few years ago, and they actually rebuilt it to the exact way that it was before.
Okay.
And it's absolutely beautiful. They have walking tours there. So if you're interested in visiting UNESCO World Heritage Sites, you definitely need to go to Lunenburg. And there's also in that general area a UNESCO biosphere, I believe it's
Ooh,
called.
that's
So if you're interested in history, in addition to lobster and lighthouses, this is a great place to visit.
I'm interested in lighthouses. Oh, see, you clicked perfectly. That was perfect. And look at the perfect bird. Oh my gosh. What a wonderful shot, Amy. That's beautiful.
Well, thank you.
Mhm.
This is the iconic Peggy's Cove, which is about, I don't know, 30 miles or so, or maybe a little more outside of Halifax.
Okay.
So this was a wonderful time of year. You need to understand that in the South Shore, February 28th in Nova Scotia was declared National Lobster Day in Nova Scotia.
Okay.
And so their festival is the whole month of February. And you might think, oh, it's cold, and going there would be kind of a crazy thing, but it's not. Yes, they do get some snow, but you know, it's maybe in the 30s, but it's not really that much snow or cold.
Okay, we have an answer. Panic D, our haunted travels, looked up that Nova Scotia's upland regions reach a maximum elevation of more than 1,700 feet above sea level and in the Cape Breton Highlands. And then he said most important lowlands lie along the Bay of Fundy and Minas Basin in the southwest and along the Northumberland Strait. Thank you, Panic D. I've got a great audience and they look up facts for me all the time.
Well, that's great. I appreciate it.
That's why we have a great chat. And that's why I do these live. I find out something new that I didn't already know. So that's perfect. Thank you, Panic D. I appreciate that a lot. All right. This is beautiful. And I love, like I said, I love lighthouses. And that is
this is another place in Lunenburg called Ironworks Distillery. And so
I'm
this
going to Lunenburg. That's all there is to it.
you know, and there's all kinds of things to learn there. But one of the things that I found really interesting from a foodie perspective is if you look in this kind of middle bottle, there's a whole pear.
There is a whole pear there. Everybody look at that.
A whole pear get inside a bottle. It's a pear liqueur. Wow. And the way that pear got into that bottle is it was grown in there. They take the bottles to the orchard and actually attach them to the tree, and they grow in there. And if you want to continue to enjoy your liqueur, you only drink it up until where the stem of the pear starts, and then you can refill it. So that was kind of a fun fact.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
That is a fun fact.
So, but they have rum that they've sent around the world on a boat to let the rum, what do you call it, mix in stores. So,
okay.
Yeah. So that was a fun thing.
Interesting. Very fun. All right. These are lobsters. Lots of them.
Yeah. This goes along with the lobster facility, Kay.
Okay. Well, I happen to have a question about that one. So I understand that you got a tour of the lobster facility. Were there any surprises there? And tell us about your visit. See, I had a question for that.
Well, there are about 650 pounds of lobster that are stored in that lobster facility in these huge tanks. I mean, I believe there were about 4 of just huge ocean seawater tanks with live lobster in them. And when the lobster first come in, they go to a purge tank for about 48 hours. And what they do at this lobster facility, the lobsters come in banded. And what they do is they have a line of about 20 guys that actually sort and grade the lobster. They weigh each one and sort them so that if you were a store or a restaurant ordering 2-pound lobsters, they could provide that to you very easily. Then once they're sorted, they're tubed, which means I'll show you here. They're put in a box similar to this, where each slot has a lobster. And then they're packed in a special way with various not refrigeration, but ice packs and that kind of thing. And they're shipped, and they can last around 48 to 72 hours, and they get shipped as far away as China for, to be eaten. And they're live at this point in time. So it's very, very neat. Now, one thing I'll tell you is these elastic bands that are put on in the lobster boat, they stay on through shipping, but when you get them in your kitchen, if you're going to cook a live lobster, you would hold the lobster up just below the claws, crossing them, but holding them in one hand, and take off those elastic bands because they will flavor your lobster, and you don't want to taste like rubber.
Yeah, so, you don't want rubber tasting.
So
A Space for Three says that's a lot of lobster, and Amy got to see a lot of lobster when she was on the lobster crawl up in Nova Scotia. So, all right, what's this next photo for us, Amy?
Well, I just wanted to mention we were talking about all the different towns along that South Shore, and Barrington is the lobster capital of the world.
Oh, wow.
Well, of the Canada. Excuse me. And so I just wanted to give Barrington a shout out. There's
Barrington. Woohoo! If you're from Barrington, shout out in the chat. All right, never mind. That's cool that it's the lobster capital of Canada and you got to go. That's really neat. That lobster on the sign is bigger than the boat. That's huge. It's thought that 44-pound one was big. No, anyway.
Yeah, that's the one.
All right. So you got to go lobstering out on one of those lobster boats. I'm really excited about that tour because, well, and you said we could go, but how was your experience catching lobsters out of the ocean? Because that would be something I've never done.
Well, the one thing is, the thing that surprised me, I think, was these are commercial lobster fishing boats, but they're not huge boats. I mean, they're, as you can see, these guys are hauling up the lobster traps from the side, and the water's like right there. And I, being from Michigan, a big boat person, and been on boats a lot over the course of my life and never really gotten seasick. Here I was, by the end of the trip, getting a little queasy.
Really?
And so if you do have that issue on a lobster boat, they say just look at the horizon and that will steady you.
Okay. So, well, that's a good tip to know too. Matt gets motion sickness. So if we ever went on something like this, I'd love to go on something like this. That's a really unique experience that I don't get being from Missouri. So that's
what you can do is there is a place called White Point Beach Resort in Hunts Point, Nova Scotia, and they offer a 2-night stay and the chance to go out on this lobster boat. And it's somewhere around $500 a person, I believe, from what I could see.
Okay.
So you can check that out. But here we were actually pulling in lobster traps. One guy on the right is taking out the lobster that they trapped, and the guy on the left is rebaiting the lobster. They use haddock to bait their traps, and so that is what was happening. And here they mark their traps on buoys. Their traps are like on a cord, or I don't know the proper term for it, but they're about 6 of them are tied together, and then a buoy marks them.
Okay.
And they pull them up through that, and they simply take out the lobsters, rebait the traps, put them back on the boat, and when they have all half a dozen finished, then they can take and put them back in.
I have a question. It's
Sure.
a random one. So and I know nothing about lobster fishing at all, or lobstering, but so if they have buoys and other traps, is there an area that, like, okay, this is my area of the ocean?
Yes, actually, they have licensing, and they have different districts. And so, for example, the South Shore is districts 33 and 34. And so then they're assigned a license. And it's funny, but one person that I met, their great grandfather or grandfather got his lobster license for 25 cents. And today that license could be up to $500,000. But they're passed on down and through the generations.
Oh, wow. So, okay. So that 25-cent one way back when has now been passed along.
Yes, through the generations to, it was the person who was telling me their brother who now has it.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's amazing.
In different parts of Nova Scotia, this is the South Shore. So they have the winter, but the cold water makes the lobster particularly succulent. But different areas to the north and in various areas each have their own season for sustainability.
Oh, wow. That's just really interesting. I'm learning so much today. I bet you learned a ton on this.
Oh, I did.
Yes, keep showing me pictures, because you have more pictures than I have questions. So that's the bottom of a lobster.
Yes, it is. And if it's a female lobster, that is what they call berried, BERRIED, meaning that she has eggs and is lobster bearing. They will notch her tail and throw her back so that they can continue to produce lobster.
Lobsters, yes. That's a neat preservation kind of thing. So that's neat.
And I wanted to show this picture. This is in Peggy's Cove, and the reason why I wanted to show it is these are the old style lobster traps, the wooden ones.
Oh yeah.
And today, more and more people are using the wire ones that you saw in my earlier picture.
Sure. Well, they deteriorate less quickly, I'm sure.
Yes. So I thought that was an interesting fact.
That is an interesting fact. That's really cool. I wanted to go on to having you be a lobster roll judge. Can you tell us what a lobster roll is?
Yes.
Okay.
So I was in, I judged a lobster roll contest, and this is Alain Bousset, the kilted chef, and he was our MC.
Nice.
This is our winning lobster roll. Basically, it's a lobster sandwich. But I had an opportunity to eat parts of about a dozen lobster rolls. And this was the winning one from Captain Cat's Lobster Shack. And it was absolutely, this was my favorite. It was a blind judging, so you don't know who picked what, but this was my top choice. And what we judged on was things like the first was presentation. And so you looked at the visual appeal, the bun to filling ratio. And as you can see here, the filling is overflowing. The bun is toasted and buttered. So it's very nice little crunch on it. So we had 50 out of 50 points, 15 points were presentation. They must present the lobster roll as they do in their restaurant.
Okay.
So that was another.
It has to be plated like you would see it if you went to the restaurant. Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then 30 points were based on taste. And you know what? Everybody's taste is different. And if you grew up in Nova Scotia, it seemed like everybody was very partial to the just minimalist. You got to taste the lobster. Here, they had a little bit of green onion and celery, or onion and celery and mayo, but some lobster rolls are warm and they used with melted butter versus the mayo. And then the other factor that you judged on that got 5 points was the wow factor.
Okay.
So I have another picture of a lobster roll, but many of them garnish with a whole lobster claw. But and you would be shocked at the variety. You saw a lobster roll earlier, and it was on a croissant.
Right.
This one was on kind of what I called a New England style split top bun at the top, where the sides aren't brown. They're toasted. But there was actually one that they served it on a black squid ink bun, and it was served, the lobster was deep fried, which some thought was sacrilegious, but it was very similar to me, not being a local, to a New Orleans style po' boy, maybe.
Okay.
So that to me had a lot of wow in it with the
that was very unique.
Yeah. So that was my first food contest that I had a chance to judge, but I am a big foodie. And I'm open to doing that again.
Yeah, that would be, well, it would be really interesting to go do that. I'm sure you got very full.
Yeah, I mean, they gave us each about a quarter. Well, this is an example, about a quarter of a lobster roll for each one, but there were 12.
I was going to say 12. That's a lot.
You didn't have to eat the whole thing, but you had to eat enough to decide. But this one, I kept going, and I practically ate the whole piece of this.
I would have too. I mean, there's nothing to be done. When you like it, you know?
Yeah, this was great.
I want you to get to more pictures. So because you have a lot. And we only have a couple minutes left of our but we love talking about lobsters, and people in the Marty's Cruise drooling over here in the chat. So yeah, people have been very excited since I put up the thumbnail. They were like, oh my gosh. So guys, if you have any questions for Amy about her trip to Nova Scotia or anything, please put at Happy Trails Hiking in the chat so that I can see those questions and we'll get them on here for you. What are we looking at here, Amy?
This was kind of a typical lobster boil, also served at Captain Cat's. We had things here like lobster nachos,
Oh, wow.
creamed lobster on mashed potatoes. Another thing that we had that was really quite delicious at Acadian Maple Products was lobster gelato.
Lobster
And
gelato.
but it was really good. It had nice pieces of lobster, but it was kind of in like a vanilla based. It wasn't vanilla though. I shouldn't say that. They had used the base with using lobster stock. So here's another lobster roll from another place called um, the Port Grocer in Port Medway, which was another town.
Wow.
It's a store, but they have a restaurant in the back, and so that was wonderful.
Yeah, people in the chat are still drooling. Oh, OMG, yum. So thanks, Inspired John. My last question for you is, did you do anything that wasn't food related? So
yeah, well, I did. We went to a metal shop and
okay.
we did metal working. We actually created a lobster claw metal bottle opener so that we could open our beer bottles with it. And this is just a picture of the shop, the owner, and his name is Franz Freitzel, and he is a local metal worker and artist and creates sculptures. And this is his workshop, and we would heat it in the center and then hit it with hammers and that kind of thing.
So this is a forge. So a metal forge?
Yeah.
Wow, that's really cool.
It's a lot. It's hard. That was hard work. So, but we saw lots of lighthouses. We went to a place called Oak Island, which there's a whole thing about treasure. And if you're into the History Channel, you should take a look at the Oak Island. We actually went there and saw a bit about that. So that's
cool.
The end of my pictures.
Awesome.
But
yeah, and so just to recap, for the folks that might not have come in at the very beginning, Amy was on the South Shore of Nova Scotia, and she got to go on to the Lobster Crawl Festival. There is in the description a link to the Nova Scotia's South Shore Lobster Crawl, and or her article on foodieflashpacker.com. And I'm sure Amy would like to have me say thank you to Visit Nova Scotia for hosting her so she can come and talk to us about it. So any following thoughts or finishing up thoughts, Amy?
Well, all I can say is if you go to Nova Scotia, if you're a lobster lover, that's where you need to go. And actually, you can actually participate in these kind of activities, and the lobster rolls are very reasonably priced. So
let's all go eat lobster.
Yeah.
That sounds great. Amy, thanks for joining me again and sharing your trip and your food and all your photos. They were wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Kay. I really enjoyed it. And if anybody has questions about Nova Scotia, reach out.
Oh, well, we certainly will. And if you'll hang out for just a second, I'm going to finish out the show.
Sure.
All right, guys, you heard it. Go over to Amy and say hello and tell her that you saw her on Happy Trails Hiking, and 2, hit the like button, share this out, and 3, thank you very much, Inspired John. You're wonderful. I appreciate you, and we'll give you as much lobster as you can, but you need to go out and live the life you love today and get some lobster. And remember, you are not replaceable. Have a great weekend, guys.